I saw Chacha. Chacha over there is also a famous film producer, right? You won a festival in German. Cha, Muhsin Rashid. Okay, you're mute.
Welcome to the participant to our web seminar today. Okay. Hi guys. Welcome to the web seminar.
Hi.
Hi.
Hai.
Hi.
Okay, we will start seminar at 7:30. But before we start it, we need to the participant to fulfill the Mentimeter and the link already we sent in our Zoom chat room. So you guys can check it right now. Thank you.
Hai.
Okay, now let me introduce myself. My name is Bastian Sitorus, and in this opportunity, I will be your master of ceremony. Okay, but
Seminarnya
before
di
we
apa?
jump to the next session, I would like to suggest all the participants to turn on the camera and turn off the microphone during this web seminar event. Thank you. Also, for the information, this web seminar, we use two video conferences platform, which are Zoom and YouTube live streaming. For the first 100 people who have registered, might join via Zoom and the rest may join through YouTube video streaming. And to get more understanding about this event, I will explain about the purpose of Harmony in Diversity web seminar. Well, the background is start from racism is a belief or a doctrine that states the biological differences in the human race determine the achievement of culture and that certain races are superior and have the right to manage other races. Nowadays, the world is in a state of these racism issues. All people around the world bring this topic as a hot topic to discuss in all media platforms. To respond these racism issues as a millennial generation, it is appropriate that we have an open and responsive mind and also taking a role to face these racism issues. President University Major Association of Communication, or we can say it as Puma Communication, as one of organization in President University has several goals to respond to the racism issues and live in diversity, and hopefully this event could be useful for our society. So you guys can see the Mentimeter on the screen right now. And also we have a purpose for this web seminar. Is the first thing is to raise public awareness about living in the world will always face many differences. Second, to show various ethnies, races, and religions or personalities and other small things from different perspectives. And the last is to build a wise personality in managing minds and strengthen positive view about life in diversity so that they always respect each other. Well, this seminar is going to be delivered by our four outstanding speakers, which are, first is Mr. Muhammad Raudi Getmir, as the head of communication program in President University, also research expert on Islam and the media with focus on Indonesia. Second is Mr. Alexander Matthews, a film programmer at Kinosaurus. The third is Kak Kristi Riana as a beauty content creator Indonesia. Fourth is Mr. Leonard Cortana, a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center Internet and Society at Harvard University. Also, PhD candidate in cinema studies at New York University. But before we jump to the main agenda, let me explain the rundown of this web seminar. First is, after the opening session by MC, we will proceed to bridging session by our moderator. After that, we will do some ice breaking. And then we have some question and answer session. And before we going to the photo session, we will share to you the result of Mentimeter like the screen right now. Well, okay. Hope you guys have a great session. And for the next, let us welcome our moderator, Miss Anastasia Chitra. Time is yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Miss.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be. It's such an honor for us to have you here. And as you can see from your monitors, there's a Mentimeter, this kind of survey, what kind of discrimination that happened the most around you. So for the committee, can you share the link on the chat room? Okay. Can you share the link for the Mentimeter on the chat room so they can fill the questions here? Okay, because you show the result. Okay, so you can click a link. The committee will put the link on the chat box. So just click on the link. All right, so we have a question, what kind of discrimination that happened the most around you? So we can see from the result here, ethnicity is still #1 over here. And while we're waiting for our speakers to be complete, so I would like to introduce myself. It's such an honor for us to have you here to be part of this harmony and diversity. So let me introduce myself. My name is Anastasia Chitra. I'm one of the lecturers in President University, and I'm also a peace education enthusiast. So I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to discuss about diversity, race, and representation, rethinking media and new media with Raudy Gadmir. He is a researcher of Islam and media. Alexander Matthews, film programmer at Kinosaurus. Kristi Raina, she's a beauty content creator and also the campaigner of #Tim Sawamatang. And also we have a special guest, Leonard Cortana, fellow at the Berkman Klein Center, Internet and Society, Harvard University, and also a PhD candidate in cinema studies in New York University. It's going to be very interesting about discussions. We're going to talk about in general about show how the media and racism have strong connection from time to times, from traditional media until the new medias. Okay, so I would like to start if okay, the Mentimeter is already done, guys. Okay, for the committee, okay, as you can see here, there's a lot of discrimination around us. So on the chat room, where's the link for the Mentimeter, guys?
Wait, me still in progress.
Okay. Okay, so when we talk about discrimination, so probably currently for the past 3 days or a week or 2 weeks, we're talking about this Black Lives Matters things that happens in the USA for the George Floyd's because have the violence of police brutalities. And then after 2 days afterwards, we also have this #PartForLivesMatter in Kalimantan in Indonesia. Okay, so for the participants, may we request you to mute the microphone, please? Okay. Okay. All right. All right then. Okay, so today, our first presenter is going to be Mr. Raudy Gadmirs. He's going to talk about Islam and also media, and also we wait for for him to join. I think he's still in waiting room. Mr. Rowdy, are you already here? Mr. Rowdy, are you here?
Mr. Rowdy is not in a waiting room, Miss.
Okay, so I think we should move to the next presenters because I think Mr. Rowdy facing problems with his signals. Okay, next we're going to have also a very interesting topic about race representation in Indonesian films. Well, I talk about Papua. I mean, is Papua that we can remember some Indonesian films that actually talking about Papua. And now we have a very special guest, Alexander Matius, a film programmer at Kinosaurus, and he's going to be very specific with his presentation today about Papua in films and also in generals about how film represent race in Indonesia. So if you already here, we'll let you to be the first presenters. It's an honor. Okay, Alex, are you already here? Matthias?
Hello.
Okay, he's here.
My
Okay.
voice clear
Okay.
for all of
Okay.
you?
I'm great. How are you, Alex?
Yeah, great. So I will be the first.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so for the committee, you can stop sharing screen with everyone, please, the Menti. Okay, so Alexander Matthews, he is ready to present to you a very interesting topics about Papua in Indonesian films, or probably race representation in Indonesian films or cinema of Indonesia. Okay, so please welcome Mr. Alexander Matthews.
Okay, so I will share my screen. I'm in the front of my desktop, so a lot of notes because this is a very, very basic research. So I will share my. Okay, and okay, I go to stop my video for a while. Okay. So I hope everybody can see these presentations. Wait. Wait. Okay. I got to turn off my videos, but if I turn off my videos, you can see the presentation or not?
Yes, sir, we can see it.
Okay. So I hope the connection will be great if I turn off the connection, turn off the video first. You can see the presentations right now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
We can see.
Okay. So I will start. So thank you for having me. So my name is Alexander Matius. Just call me Matius or Mamat. So I'm a film programmer based in Jakarta, Indonesia. So right now I will speak on English, of course. And thank you for the invitation. So when I was invited by Miss Gayatri Nadia, is my friend, I was actually confused about what I should present on this diversity topic. So, but at the same time, my timeline was filled with many unpleasant incidents in America, which then triggered the Black Lives Matter hashtag. And then at the same time, I was thinking, what about the race representation in Indonesia? And at the time, what I was taught is like, how about Papua? And because I heard so many incidents in there, not in Papua but also in Java, a lot of racial incidents experienced by our Papuan friends. So I'm curious about how then the film portrayed the Papua after all this time. And then I said, this is the topic I want to presenting to all of you. So I will talk about the portrayal of Papua in Indonesian films. Sorry. Okay. Previously, I have to say this presentation is not very in-depth research, and this is just only my thought, and this is for based on the data collection. So of course it will be many differences or pro contra or something like that. So, but hopefully this presentation will be enough as a starting point to portray for the portrayal the film in the film about Papua. Sorry, and yeah. So let's start with what is Papua at first. So what is Papua? This is the island called New Guinea. So this is the second largest island after the Greenland in the world, and the indigenous peoples of New Guinea is commonly called the Papuans. Is Melanesians. So, and the eastern half of the island, in the major land, is a mess of the independent states of Papua New Guinea, as you know, and the western half, known as the Western New Guinea or West Papua, forms a part of Indonesia. And there's two provinces right now. Is Papua and West Papua. So these two provinces have about 4 million people counted on the mid 2019, and we talk about this western side of Papua. So we don't talk about the Papua New Guinea. We talk about the province of the West Papua and Papua. So what always appears in people's minds about when talking the Papua? So people in here, what I talk about is outside the Papua itself. So what often appears at last in people's conversations about the Papua themselves. So you can see this three image. Maybe I hope it will be clear about what people's mind about Papua. As you can see, like they very backwards, very retarded, live in somewhere in other places, like in the jungle, not in the city, don't have clothes, less beautiful or handsome, less internet signals, phone signals, poor. As you can see, the first image is like they very rough, very drunk, just like that. So this is a bad image. Or you can see like the government, it's very, very welcoming the Papuans. It's in the second half. And then you can see the third is just like a poor human being. So what rarely or even does not appear in the conversations? The first thing that you must thinking is Papua is not very backward. So they have each other lives. So these three images, I hope it's very, very clear about what missing if we talk about Papuans nowadays. So the second is like they have their own lives. They're using clothes, of course, just like us, just like human beings. And then they are happy to have them, to have their lives. And then, as you can see in the first and the third images, like in recent times, there's also have been several racial-related events from social media. As you can see, many people talk about is what food do you eat in Papua? What did the Papua have this? Did the Papua have that? So there's issues in our conversation, and then also the invasion of the student dormitories sometimes ago in Jogja, I think, or Malang, I forget. So many people shout with animals words. So this ratio is indeed the problem of Indonesian. Is not from the Papuan. So we can see how the repression done. By the way, the picture number 3 is people. The police say it hoax, but it's not hoax. And so the desire to talk about their willing is not provided right now by the government. So as you can see at the first, if you don't know about the words is said like the Papua's people is not monkey. And that's the symbols of independence Papua movement. So I'm not talking more about the Papuans right now. So we talk about the move to Papuan in Indonesian films. So what is the portrait through of film about Papua? I then try to trace a number of Indonesian films related to Papua. It's not very easy because the film archive is not so good in Indonesia, of course. So, but in this presentation, I will talk about the future length film, the fiction. It's not a documentary or short. So as we know, the study of race will emerge as one of the important studies. So in the 1960s, studies in the United States of America about race is begin to emerge in film. So there's a statement about the film is a visual images in which social issues, including racial and ethnic issues, are raised. So I'm curious about how Papua's is portrayal in Indonesian films. That's the main issue. I think about 2 films, 2 or 3 films, but then I found some films that maybe I haven't watched yet because maybe the films is gone right now or missing. But there's also the minor part of the in this film that talk about the Papua. So I start with the first films that I found talk about Papua is Karina. It made on 1954. So the film is made by Henry L. Duarte. So in this story, the Papua is only using as a place of disposal for a post office clerk who is accused of crime. So there's only an exile place in the film. The film is I'm not sure the film still exists right now. I don't know if they're missing or gone. It's too bad. The next films that I found is like on 1964. It's called Jiwa Kolonial. The director is R. Iskak. So the film is set in 1961, the year that our government wants to wants to give the Papua freedom from the Netherlands. So this set is in the 1961 when Indonesian paratroopers were deployed in West Papua, while still being controlled by the Dutch, of course. And the people support the battle to return the West Papuan, and they got it. They taking over the Dutch owned plantation and sugar mills. And yeah, the setting is in Papuans, by the way. So I haven't seen the films. I'm not sure. Again, same with the Karina. Is it still exists or not? But I think it's like the first films, maybe, that fully settings or mostly settings in Papuas or story in the Papuas. So, okay, so next, The film is, I want to talk about the films. It's not in the timeline perspective. So I jumped into the 1984, the film called the Dia Sang Penakluk, or the He's the Conqueror, or maybe she's, I forgot, because the main character is a woman. It's played by Susana, if I'm not wrong. So the film is, the main character was forced to go to Papua, and in this film that shows one of the tribal groups called Dani, one of the tribes in Papua, as a primitive and very backwards tribe. So this is a very usually do in Indonesian films, the Papuans as the very backwards tribes and very primitive, lives in the jungle and many more. So it's the same thing on the something beautiful, that the first image, Sesuatu Yang Indah. It's filmed by Wim Umboh, one of the Indonesian legendary director. I've seen the film, and on as you can see, the films is promoting Papua itself. There's image on the Papua girls in there, but the film is only like Papua's is like only not half in the movies, maybe like almost in the end of the movies, because the story is like the main characters, the male characters is have an accident, helicopter crash, and then goes down in Papua, and then he survived, got helped by the Papua women, the Papuans woman. So in these films, that interesting that the Papuans woman cannot
Okay, are we lost connection from Alexander Matthews, or is this me? Kita kehilangan koneksi sama Alex?
Yes, Miss.
Oke.
Me
Yes.
too.
Oke, Jadi banyak pengertian kita ya atau pengetahuan kita soal Papua itu atau ras lain lewat film ataupun mungkin iklan gitu. Saya masih ingat waktu saya pertama kali going abroad gitu kan ya ditanyain gitu, you Indonesian? Yes. Okay. So why you don't look like in the postcard? Because when we talk about postcards, it's always portrayed Papuans over there for Europeans or for Americans. So when they knew that I'm Indonesians, their perceptions about Indonesia is the Papuans. So also my perspective about film about a certain race, I just know it from the media. Oke, nanti mungkin banyak pertanyaan kepada Alexander Matthews. Banyak banget yang udah aku catat di sini gitu. Jadi teman-teman, you can start asking questions to the speakers on the chat box and we will going to read it later. But when Alexander Matthews speak about films, that's how powerful media is in creating our perception about certain race. What about religion? Because religion is one of the race maker atau penanda ras gitu ya. So we have our researcher here. His expertise in the research of about Islam and medias, and he's going to talk about Islamophobia, and is our own head of head of communication in President University. So please welcome Mr. Muhammad Raudi Gatmir. Are you here with us? Mr. Raudi, are you here with us? Okay. Okay, about Islam and media. So his presentation is about Islamophobia, how Islamophobia rises not only in Indonesia, but interestingly, he's going to talk about new Islamophobia. What is that? Okay, so do we have Mr. Raudi now? Ah, he's there. Hello, good evening, Raudi Gatmir.
Hello, Mendici. Sorry for being a little bit late because of some technical errors. Yeah.
That's okay. Now, Alexander Matthews just told us about Papua in film Indonesia's, and we're also talking about religion as racial marker, right? Okay, Raudi Gatmir, please welcome. It's for your presentation.
Okay, thank you, MPC. I would like to ask for the moderator to share my PowerPoint, please. Okay, I'll make it very brief. The title of my presentation will be Media and New Islamophobia, a case of Indonesia. This is based on my latest research I conducted since maybe some 10 years back. This kind of topic also. I'm doing this kind of topic also for my PhD dissertation. I've been doing this for the last 6 years, first in Australia at Griffith University in Australia, and since last year, I continue my PhD, transfer to UNER, University Airlangga Surabaya. Okay, next please. I'll begin with, I'll provide you with one very important illustration. Shortly after the Indonesian president election, Pemilu 2019, a friend of mine, senior journalist who works for one of the biggest media group in Indonesia, when he was in the middle of a conversation with his peers via Facebook, when he asked, when when he was asked from his friends, why did you change your name, which is a common Muslim name? He replied instantly, well, actually, I intentionally changed my name on my Facebook account to avoid the impression of being ke-Arab-Araban, or maybe in plain English, being seen as an Arab. In his opinion, Islamic name is synonymous with Arabic names. He didn't want to be seen as a Muslim by using his Arabic name, even though he's himself a Muslim. Next, please. Okay, I'll begin with, I'll give you some definitions, working definition. Actually, when we talk about Islamophobia, there are a lot of definitions available from the literature, especially from media studies and communication. But I'll limit my definition, maybe just four, just to give you an idea, a big picture of what Islamophobia can be defined. First, I would like to give you from Allen, 2010, Islamophobia is a phenomenon that is directed at Muslim by non-Muslim. This is the commonest, the most common definition, which is well, let's say taken for granted, yeah. And then the second definition is Islamophobia is a form of cultural racism, according to Schiffer and Wagner, 2011. The third definition will be Islamophobia is an accepted concept that implies hatred or animosity aimed at Islam and Muslim, based on Kayaglu 2012 and Clark 2012. Next, please. And the last definition, Islamophobia can be defined as socially reproduced prejudice about and inversions against Islam and Muslims, and actions and practices that attack, exclude, or discriminate people on the basis that they are or perceived to be Muslim and associated with Islam. This last definition can be analyzed, can be used as a working definition to explain the definition I gave you from my friend, the journalist. What he's trying to say is actually fits in with this last definition, because he didn't want to be called or to be perceived as Muslim just because he's not an Arab, he's Indonesian. Yeah, that's why in that kind of discourse he mentioned via the social media. Actually, we can consider him as being Islamophobic, even though he's not a Western. He's himself a Muslim. Okay. Okay, next please. So my tentative finding on my research, I can give a summary, a very well, let's say a very simplification of my tentative findings. In contrast to the standard definition of Islamophobia, the phenomenon of Islamophobia triggered by social practice in Indonesia after the Reformation is the emergence of a new model of Islamophobia. the sphere of Islam in Muslim from fellow Muslims themselves. I call this the term domestic Islamophobia. Very different with the standardized definition of, let's say, the old definition of Islamophobia. This finding can be seen, can be viewed as, you know, me, for example, me, I'm a Muslim, and then Mamsi is also a Muslim herself, but she's very afraid of me just because I have a little bit different Islamic thought compared to her thinking of how Islam to be practiced. So this is very, very new. This is, let's say, well, I can say this is a pioneer study on this kind of, you know, Islamophobia study in Indonesia. So actually, at the moment, in the context of Indonesian Muslim, done and by, you know, the discourses reported in the Indonesian mainstream media, the Islamophobia has a very different definition and understanding. The actors, yeah, what is it? The people who involved in this kind of, you know, what we call as cultural racism, among the same, exactly among the same fellow Muslim. So this is very new development. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, before, please move back. Okay, news bias. Well, actually, this is one of the most important news bias theory I adopted in my PhD research from Gunther 1997, cited in Williams 2003, has identified 4 ways in which bias has been analyzed. Why bias actually? Because we need a tool, you know, to analyze news media content. So I applied this theoretical framework. One of my theory I use in my research, what we call as news bias. So actually, when we talk about how to identify whether a news organization has conducted what we call as news bias, it can be categorized, it can be analyzed at least in four categories. First, the focus can be on who is quoted or cited, source bias. We call it as source bias. So I can give you a very practical illustration for this. First, focus on can be who is quoted or cited. For example, when we talk, we as journalists always have so many options in terms of the selection of source. Yeah. So the way I choose my source totally influenced by my, you know, my ideology. If my ideology as a journalist is heavily influenced by, for example, radical Islam, you know, something like that, you know, orang yang pakai cingkrang, you know, something like that, you know, I can be considered to be biased to apply this kind of source bias. Secondly, on the way in which language is used, semantic or discourse bias. Yeah, the language that the journalists use is, you know, can be a very strong influencer in the way when we as journalists reporting about Islam. And the third on how visual and verbal devices are used to present news, or what we call presentational bias. And the last one is on the process by which news is selected, reported, and given meaning by news organization, or what we call as organizational framework. This is the biggest, framework, yeah, because this fourth category involving the whole news media as an organization. This is the most serious bias that a news organization can do. Okay, next, please. Next slide, please. Please. Okay, some examples of AI. Indonesian mainstream news media coverage on radicalization issues among the younger generation of Islam have produced Islamophobic discourse. This is my one of my research done with my colleague Mr. Suryanto and Bapak Reza Shah, 2018. One of the most important conclusion of this research is we can prove that some Indonesian mainstream media have produced what we call as Islamophobic discourse. And then my latest research found that there's a tendency of social media in Indonesia to carry out unprofessional journalistic activities. The news bias can be unpacked through the use of non-natural language, insinuative and tendentious, especially in the context of Indonesian general election 19. Next, please. Next, please. Is it done? All?
Yes, sir. Is it done?
Okay, thank you then. Okay, that will be all, MTC. Thank you.
Okay, for the participants, you can start asking questions on the chat rooms, and also for you watching us via YouTube Live, you can also ask questions on the comment sections. Yes, it's so very interesting when we talk about media. It is very powerful. Media itself has their own agenda, and us as the audience, we also have different experience, different frameworks, and also have a different backgrounds to translate what we saw on the media. Okay, when Mr. Radi said about the news media, I would like to give another the opportunity about the films, especially Papua in films. So please welcome back again. This is Alexander Matthews, film programmer at Kinosaurus. Alex, are you here? Udah di sini lagi?
Okay,
Yeah.
so sorry for the internet loss. Maybe there is a conspiration, I don't know.
Okay.
So, okay, so can you enable the screen sharing? For me? Oh, so you will be the presentation. Okay. So we start from the last talks when about they have next 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 next. Oh yeah, so yeah, as you can see that the no before that. Yeah, so uh, before the trouble that I have, we talks about how this films is can portray the Papua as an other places an exile place or and a very jungle land and a very tribal and backwards groups. And so yeah, the last films that I haven't talked about it is Mencari Harta Karun is cooperating with Hong Kong. And again, the Papua is only a background. And the Papuans is separated in here, the groups, between the good side and the bad side. And by the way, the main villain is foreigner, and some of the Papuans group is supporting them. And Yeah, just like that. So maybe the next slide. So yeah, after we talking about the some films made from the before the Reformation era, before the 2000, we can see that the exotism of Papua, and again the stereotyping of Papua, the tribal groups is very very strong. So after the 2000, there's so many films that trying to be capturing the other story about the Papuans. It's not only the place, it's not only the tribal group, it's not only the jungle, but it's also have a social issue and the problem of human beings, just like ourselves, other places in other countries or cities. So this slide is talking about the similar theme about the films. One is Mencari Madonna, Finding Madonna, is 2005. It's talk about the HIV, AIDS, is based on a true story about the increasing HIV in Papua. So the story is about the main character from the Papua is named Joseph, infected with HIV and tries to run away after hearing that he trying to run away after he heard about the HIV patient was burned to death by his family. So he's very scared, and then he meets a sex worker from Java. The name is Madonna, who changed his life. So the premise is the premise of the film is like that. So the next film is Love from Wamena. It tells the story about the three Papuans best friends who live in a small town in Papua and have a dream to pursue their education. So they go to Wamena. So the setting in the Wamena itself is have a free and easy lifestyle, and they have HIV plague in Papuan teenagers. So the connecting dots on this two films is talking about HIV in Papuans, that's a very another different perspective from the era, the film era before. So the next. So this kind of I give an example of another kind of the movie made after 2000. It's the similar from the first slide of the films about how portrayal in the film about the Papuans. The first is called The Flight 555, is a comedy film, and he talks about the plane airplane hijacking. So there's a criminal character wants to change the direction of the plane from Bali to Papua, just because the reason is just because the Papuans the Papua tickets from Jakarta is more expensive. It's very expensive. So they hijack the Papua. But ironically, there's this character, this hijacker is using an arrow first and using a very tribal stereotyping group of Papua, undressed with some clothes like that. Yeah, you know it. And also the second one is Evan Chupan. The movie Evan Chupan is basically based on the phenomenon of the YouTube.
Yes, YouTube.
YouTube about the culture called Mob. Papua is like a stand-up comedian in Papua, but unfortunately, it's just like the character and the background, but the story is like a very not Papuan perspective. Then the character moved to Jakarta, which is very not very portrayal the Papuans. Just so the Papuans is only a little put picture on these films. So but the rest of the Papuan is lost in the film. So the third film is the Wedding and Bebek Betutu. Just only one character from the Papuans, just only by his voice, and there's nothing about it. And then Lost in Papua is very controversial because the film is depiction of the cannibal Papuan tribes. There's a tribe named Korowai, and the film is portraying this tribe is isolated in the Forbidden Forest. All of them is women. So the male character, I think, is like will be raped by this tribe, and they're cannibal. So there's the connection dots between the first slide of the films and this slide of the films, how to depicting the Papuas. It's very stereotyping when we talk about the Papua. So next the slide, please. So we talk about the two films. It's very portrayal the Papua about the educations. The first is Denias, and the second one is the Timur Matahari. It's based on the same production house, Alinea, and unfortunately, the setting is on the Papua. All of the films is setting on the Papua. Not very in the deep forest, like maybe in Forbidden Forest, like Lost in Papua, or depiction of they don't use a clothes or something like that. Very poor, yes, but I think the problem is in both of these two films. It's all about the narration about the nationalism. What is nationalism? So the solution is always a nationalism. There's a school, the formal school, and both of these films, interestingly, is closing by the national flag of Indonesia, and the singing of some of the national anthem. And then the question is, does it relevant? What is need for the Papuans to move from the war or the clash of the tribes? We don't know. So I think that's the problem of these two films. So the next is the film based on the Papua itself. So they're produced by the Papuans. Next slide. Yeah. So this Melody Kotarusa is produced by the Papuans. It's produced by independent, and the screening is also independent too. Only 3 days, if I'm not wrong, in the cultural space in Papua. So they talk about the pluralism and also they're talking about the love issues in there. So yeah, like I said, the screen is like 3 days in cultural space in Papua, in Marape, the capital city of the capital city is one of the cities in Papua, and they sold 1,000 DVDs and sold out in 2 weeks. And I just know that they have a sequel. So yeah. So the next slide is, so there's films called Tabula Rasa. This is the very interesting films. This is a very different films about talking about the Papuas, because this is the story about one of the character Papuas, as you can see in the red shirt. The character named Hans is potential football player. Of course, we know that Papua have a very talented, most talented football players right now in Indonesia. And one of the scout talent is wants him go to Jakarta, but unfortunately he have an injury, so he got nothing in Java. I forgot is the setting in Jakarta or in this other city, but they said in Java. So he got help by the Padang's restaurant owner, and then the story happened in there. So he become the servant, he become the family in the Padang restaurant family. So meets the Papuas and the Padangs itself on the same house. So always there's a problem, of course, because the Papuas is just background of him, but we don't see like why he doesn't want to come back. He doesn't have a money, or what his longingness, like the Papuans, the dorm that he usually live, or what. So but other way is a very different and interesting films talking about the Papua. So the next two slide is, I'm very it's grabbed my attention very well because it's very different and very strict talking about the Papuans problem. One of them is Ibunda, is a film by Teguh Karyo, one of the best Indonesian directors. The film is released in the 1986 and received so many awards at Indonesian Film Festival, including best films in that year. So it's, since the beginning, we have been told that the problem in this film that is the Papua is not acceptable in the family of his girlfriend. So that's the main problem. So later, then we know that the rejection is based on their race. So that's a very interesting movie. It's on the 1980s and still very relevant about today. So the film is the Papuans. It's not acceptable for a family member which is from Java. Because the ethnicity, and it's not talking about the personality of others, but in the story, so they have a quotes that it's relevant to the stereotyping itself, like tell to your Papuans to know himself better. So and the mother, the character of the mother, the main character of this film, said that don't talk about the don't bringing up the Papuans, about the Papuans itself. So your face is like Arab, like so that's one of the Indonesian film talking about the race, the ethnicity issues, and it's one of the best films maybe capturing the Papuans itself. The last films that very intriguing me is film was made by Garin Nugroho. It's a Bird's-Man Tale. In Indonesian title is Aku Ingin Menciummu Sekali Saja. And this is maybe the only one for the future length film fiction that's capturing the voices of Papua nowadays. That's still happening today, because even he can record the atmosphere of Papua when the race of voices of independence right now, even he captured it in that day. Even he can record the atmosphere when the one of the very important person in Papua Presidium named Tesio Eloy is being killed. So, and also the film is talking about how a teenager, very interesting with some woman, but in the most of the settings of these films is talking about how Papua more grown up to speak of their voice, wants to speak with their wants of being themselves. And one of the character is very traumatized, as maybe you can see the films. After this, very traumatized character of the violence. And one of interesting quote that I remember of this film is when some when the characters, female characters on this movie, Papuan female characters on the movie is like have talking with the father in the church, and he said, "What if the Jesus is black? What if Jesus is born in Papua? Doesn't does the people will call her a black? Does the people call her ugly?" So this is a very interesting questions if we want to talk about the Papua.
Kayaknya bakal banyak yang nanya tuh like soal itu tuh. Udah masuk di beberapa chat box soal itu. But yes, we saw these movies also and also the trailers. Okay.
So yeah, I will be close. Yes, of course, it is two slide. The slide is the other side because we talk about the feature length, the fiction. We don't talk about the documentary itself, but it's we have more more outspoken voices on the documentary. As you can see, maybe you can see the films like Lucas Moment or Halaman Papua made by the Formalenteng. So yeah, that's all I found for about the portrayal of Papua. If you have any questions, please, maybe I can answer it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So there's lots of our understandings, our knowledge about Papua is coming from, or another race coming from films and also the media, and sometimes it causes us stereotyping them into certain things itu because that's what we saw on the movies or that was in the films or on the medias. All right, we're going to continue. We still have two speakers right now. Is one is going to be talking about the new media. She's going to represent the youngsters here that using social medias heavily. And also we're going to have Leonard Cortana from Harvard University and New York University. But before that, I guess we have a little bit announcement from the committee. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, we would like to say thank you to our beloved speaker and also for Ms. Anastasia for being our moderator today. But don't worry, guys, the event is not over yet because now we have something for our from our Puma Communication. It is a simple exercise, and I'm going to share you guys the example of the simple exercise, and we're going to do it together. Okay, wait a minute. Oh.
1 ditambah 1.
Sorry, it's something. Okay.
Okay, so Puma Communication, actually the organizers of these lovely events, Puma is like a President University major associations, and they organize this event from the plan and from the execution right now. And we would like to share how the youngsters they're like apa namanya ya, they dominate what we call as the new media. So the trend is coming from the youngsters. So actually, what they're trying to show to us, these things also went virals on the social medias, right? Of this game.
Okay. Okay, this is the simple exercise it is.
1 ditambah 1 sama dengan 2. 2 ditambah 2 sama dengan 4. 4 ditambah 4 sama dengan 8. 8 ditambah 8 sama dengan 16.
Okay, guys, that is a simple exercise that we are going to do it together. Well, is it still clear or we should replay it again?
Okay, maybe you can show us, Bastian.
Okay,
Maybe you can start.
I'm going to show you guys. So this is 1. This is 2. This is 4. This is 8. And this is 19. 16, sorry. Okay, we're going to play the music, but before it, let's hear the music first and then we do it together. Okay, music for Kak Arnold, is that already? Okay, that's the song. And how if we are together doing it? Is that fun, right? Well, okay, we're going to do it once again. And with the count, 3, 2, 1, music. Dengan 8. 8 ditambah 8 sama dengan 16. Okay, that's for our exercise today. Thank you. And now we would like to recall Miss Anastasia to continue the session. For Miss Anastasia, time is yours.
Oke, kebayang ya teman-teman ya, untuk menjadi anak muda perlu banyak kreativitas. So that's why I would like to welcome our next speaker. He's also a youngsters who's using her platform in social media to voicing about embracing beauty, yeah, and how social media now has roles in you know in beauty standards and so on, and how it portrayed in social media, and how this youngsters, how this young woman, she's using her platform to voice that and to inspire others, especially for the youngsters. And she's also alumni of President Universities. And please welcome, this is Christy. Hi Christy, are you there? Okay, Christy. So Christy, you can check on her Instagrams at Christy RSM. Yes. Okay, Christy, she's here. Hello.
Hi, Miss DC.
Okay, Christy, you can start share your presentation now.
Okay, the committee will share the PPT, right? Okay. Okay, let's start. My voice is clear, right? Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Okay. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for trusting me to voice this issue to the public. My name is Christy Raina. People usually call me Chisti. As Miss Tisi said before, I've studied at President University, majoring in communication, batch 2016. So today I'm going to talk about harmony in diversity from the beauty perspective. It's about Indonesian beauty standards. Next. Okay, let's start from why I voiced this issue. It starts from here. As you can see in the screen, this is the cover of my thesis. And for your information, our moderator, Miss Isi, is my supervisor at the time. And I'm so glad to be supervised by her because she truly guides me to focus on this issue. The title of my thesis is Beauty Content Creator as the Conqueror of Indonesian Beauty Standards, a case study of Adelia Fa. For your information, Adelia Fa is such an inspiration for me because she's a beauty content creator that voicing about beauty standards because she has a sawo matang skin color. And she used her channel, which is social media, to voice this issue. From here, I learned about beauty standard and gives me direction to do more. And you can see on the screen too, from the Saraswati in 2013, assert that light, light, light skin color has been the ideal skin color for Indonesian women throughout the historical records. And from Halprin and 1995 believes that women from non-Western are willing to feel pain in order to reach the ideal standards of beauty. And next. Okay. In my thesis observation, I've interviewed some people. I do research this topic, and one of the people that I interview, also a psychologist, I asked about the criteria of beauty from their point of view. And yeah, as you can see on the screen, having a light skin is the first words that appeal in their mind when I ask what is the standards of beauty. And then followed by slim, long hair, tall, and other physical criteria. And those kind of criteria brings insecurity because there is a gap between the reality and the ideal beauty standards. Then there's a trigger to change it to fit the beauty standards. Next. Okay, that's why I start my campaign called #Tim Sawo Matang to voice that beauty is not about skin color, but it is deeper than that. You don't need to be light to be beautiful. You are beautiful just the way you are. Beauty has no color. Even though if you have sawo matang skin color, yeah, you are still beautiful because the insecurity bring me to this campaign. Next. I will do it fast. And these are the 3 eras of beauty influence according to Saraswati, which are Ramayana epic poem, colonialism, And then the last is after the Independence Day. And we got the image of beauty from this. So the perspective come from the old, only from this new era. And in Tamayana, for information, beautiful woman portrayed as the full moon, which has white shining faces. And then in the Dutch colonialism, they revealed the image of Caucasian white beauty through the advertisement published in Women's Magazine. And after the Independence Day until now, through the beauty advertisement itself, promote skin whitening and creams and other products that can brighter, that can white that can whitening their self. And these things construct people perspective in visualizing beauty standards and also the advertisement in this era. Next. These are some of the famous Indonesian beauty influencer, which are Abel Cantika, Nanda Arsinta, and there is Asya Farasya and Kiara Leswara. And then, yeah, they have light skin. And this also construct people's perspective to be like them because of the level of beauty influencers. Beauty influencer must be beauty, and beauty means having a light skin. Next. Sorry. Next. Okay.
Okay, I think probably they have troubles with the screen. Next, guys.
Pleasing, yeah, because of the beauty.
Yeah, I still remember when we're talking about these issues in Indonesia, right? Because as we know, Indonesian woman majority, we have what we call a sawo matang, right? Or we translate that into tan, right?
Yes.
And then we also have difficulties in finding the right terms for white skins. Is it bright skins? Okay, what should we do? Because it in it terms like it's so like race things, you know. And then when we talk about this conquering Indonesian beauty standard, where majority of Indonesians are actually the ethnicities of Malay, right? Melayu, Ras Melayu. Of course, we are born with the complexions darker compared to another ethnicity, for example. But through the advertisement, they try to brightening their skins. That's what you say. Okay, probably you have some experience when your followers like asking a question or sharing stories about that when they want to look brighter. Can you share to us?
Actually, I will share that kind of information after this slide. But yeah, I share a little bit. Yeah, as you said before, we are Indonesian and we we have the sawo matang skin and kuning langsat. So yeah, tada! These are some of the before that. Yeah, these are some of my contents on social media. I try to like give a recommendation for them to search the right to choose what I mean is to choose the right like the right shades of the foundation for their skin and also how to do makeup for their skin also. And then for the picture, I like I compare myself with the brown sugar thing because yeah it's brown and yeah and so what gitu. I share the message that yeah you can still you are beautiful no matter the color of your skin through the post. So what I'm trying to do through the hashtag Tim Sawo Matang, I try to not only educate the people through my content, like give the recommendation, but also to share the message that we must break the standard of beauty, that beauty must be having a light skin. So yeah, that's the examples of my content. And next, okay, freezing again, yes. And surprisingly, these are what people say to me through the DM, and they say they feel more confident after watching my video. It means all of us uh, have the change to voice this issue, to change the perspective of Indonesian beauty standard, just to be their self. Actually, I'm not expected that this will be so much powerful, but here is the proof that your voice is matters. No matter okay, who are you, how many followers that you have, as long as you have the social media, means you have the chance to speak. So yeah, you can read on the screen kayak pernah perawatan, kena insecure, punya kulit gelap sampai pernah terang banget warna kulitnya. Karena Kak Kristi, aku jadi mikir kalau kulit gelap tetap cantik. Ya kakak, dulu sebelum lihat video kakak, saya nggak pede dengan kulit yang saya miliki. Tapi sekarang saya paham, cantik itu nggak harus putih, yang penting kulit itu dirawat, dia akan cantik. So yeah, these are some of the example that my campaign is powerful. Not only my campaign, maybe your voice is truly matter on social media. And yeah, let's break the beauty standards. Let's break the beauty has no colors. Everyone is beautiful. Yeah, I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for Christy for sharing that. And our last speaker will reflect the presentation from our previous three speakers from other contexts. We're going to start about rethinking media and new media, how to think transnational race and also relate it with the current situations. And Leonard Cortana is a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center Internet and Society at Harvard University, and also PhD candidate in cinema studies at New York University. So good evening. Hi, Leo.
Good evening. Selamat malam to everyone.
Okay, you talk Indonesian now. Okay, so
I try.
Yes, you already heard three presentations from our three speakers. So you will reflect, and then you're going to show another context. Okay, Leo, you can start your presentation.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to share my screen also. So hopefully it should be working right now. So what I want to try to talk to, first I would like to introduce myself, sorry. So my name is Leonard Cortana. I am a fellow at Harvard, but at the same time, I'm doing my PhD in cinema studies at NYU. And as you can hear with my accent, I'm coming from France and also the French Caribbean, which is an island in the Caribbean, South Caribbean. And already my life story makes me in between two different territories. And this is maybe the reason why all those questions that we are raising and the other question that raised the other panelists around representation in film, skin and colorism, but also religion as a race marker, are also reflection that I have from other contexts that I'm working with. My research is about transnational race studies to see how race discourses and ethnicity are traveling throughout different countries. And I'm focusing on activism and the way people are using film and new media to actually advocate for a better racial justice, focusing on France and the overseas territories, Brazil and the US. One of the first things that I would like to address is what is happening right now in the street. And in a sense, to be very humble, to be presenting today in this webinar and to think about all these activists that are taking the streets. And in that sense, that giving us also a platform to reflect with the university and with our circles about what is happening. The Black Lives Matter movement was created in 2013 in the US after the death of Trayvon Martin and above all the lack of justice, the denial of justice and the impunity. And when we reflect about police violence, the Black Lives Matter movement is bringing a lot of questions around systemic racism, the question about police brutality, and in a sense, public safety that are concerning everyone. And we can see in the image, for instance, you have image of the protest in Brazil on the left side, in France, where I come from, on the right side, in Australia and Indonesia, all those questions that actually find an echo, right, in the struggle. And the way that we have all those markers of Black Lives Matter that are traveling throughout those countries, are also showing today, as Over were expressing in their presentation, that we are living in a global media, in a global mediascape. And those images, this shock therapy that we have when we saw, unfortunately, those images of George Floyd being killed on that video, those really atrocious images, also had a very strong affect reaction. People felt in their skin what's happening there. And this could be also a reason why this echo had such a strong reaction all over the world. But I wanted to start by having this thought for the activists taking the streets for us. One of the first images I want to talk is that shock therapy that sometimes global media are making. And I don't know if you remember that story, this child from Syria of Kurd origin called Aylan Kurdi that was traveling on that boat to reach Greece and that died drowned in Turkey. And that image that became viral in the media. And I love that, that drawing, that representation that we have from Eduardo Sales in Mexico, is writing in Spanish, the collective memory all the time is very short term. And I think this image is saying a lot around the shock that we had when we saw that image going out all over the world. And very quickly, this image became a little bit obsolete when new events were coming up. The idea and what I would like to advocate when we think about globally issues about race, racial justice, is the need that we have to build up a memory, an international memory that these events belong to our collective frustration that we want to transform into justice. So I find it interesting to start the presentation by thinking about those images that we receive, so many horrible images that we receive from all over the world, and unfortunately how instantaneous they can become in our memory sometimes. Also, one of the things that I would like to fight is the idea that as today, the circulation of the image of Black Lives Matter and in general, the racial justice all over the world is not a new thing. And this is important to remember. The Black Panthers movement, the Black liberation during the civil rights movement in the 60s in the US already had a very strong reaction and circulation all over the world. We can take, for example, in Algeria at the time, that was in this decolonization process, became this third world capital of culture. And the Black Panther were there, organized also in '69, a festival, a Pan-African festival, that was retaking all those different justice advocacy as part of the agenda. On the right side, you can see on the image, the Black Panther Party from Australia, and this reappropriation for the Black struggle also with the indigenous context in Australia, and the importance that all those different narratives were traveling already at that moment. Another story that is maybe important to remember is this Black feminist, communist activist and professor that was arrested in 1971 for suspicion of having collaborating on a murder in a court in the US. Obviously, that was wrong afterwards. And there was a huge mobilization all over the world for what we call the Free Angela movement. You can see, for instance, on the right side, it's written in German. It was from the DDR, the East Germany territory. And there was an action to send 1 million roses to Angela, and people were sending postcards and letters to somehow make advocacy to free Angela as a political prisoner. On the left side, you can also see a poster in Spanish, down in French, and all those things, those what I call the networks of solidarity. A wish of freedom is not new, and it's also something that has been building up a lot with the civil rights movement. We can see today a lot of different social movements. We can think about the youth movements that have created all over the world this activist movement for the planet Earth and to have a better advocacy around climate change. But all those different seeds that we have that are creating an international movement should be forgotten, that has a history. And the thing that is very important when you reflect about activist stories is that they give you a vision of the past, they give you the fight for the present, and they give you a vision for the future. So when we speak about activist memories and to put them in perspective with what we are living today, I think that activist is a very good archive to see also what was at the agenda today. And when we see that 40, 50 years, 60 years after the civil rights movement in the US, we are still today fighting for racial justice, means that there's so much work to do, and the repercussion that all those different events have in the world is also saying that the world is not over. So the word transnational, global, world movement that we can see is, I think a very good definition will be to understand that there is a desire to transcend the nation state as the taken for granted unit of analysis. And this is, I think, important because all those narratives that we get, and for instance, right now in the US, what is happening with the Black Lives Matter movement, in France, in my country, there is a lot of conversation saying, can we import, right, this American struggle? Can we talk Black Lives Matter in the French context? And I think that the movement that is in the street is not only recuperating and using it as a platform for the country, but is also calling for ending racism all over the world. And it's also using signifiers, markers that are not only connecting to the country of location of the protest, but also being a solidarity response to what is happening all over the world. So I think that as a first reflection, my part of that project, of that panel today is to reflect how moving all those issues transnationally can really help having also another kind of vision of all those different racial justice advocacy. Why it's important to go beyond the nation state? Because we have in our countries very, very different tradition to speak about race and racial discourses. Obviously, in the US, people identify with race. There is a census when people can say which race they belong. In Western Europe and in my country in general, in France, this is the universalist discourse when we don't see race anymore, when we are colorblind. So the skin color doesn't exist as a category or try to be erased as a category. And for instance, to give you some kind of facts, in 2018, we had still in the constitution, the French constitution, the word race, like we shouldn't have any distinction of race in our country. But in 2018, we removed the word constitution, the word race from the constitution, and we became some kind of a raceless country, which is interesting because racism remains. And obviously we have like iteration of racism, strong Islamophobia waves after the terrorist attack that we had in 2015 and 2016. But removing that word race was a way to tell from the French legislators that we were not in those framework of the post-World War II, where we were thinking that we needed to speak about race as a way to combat racism. But as we can see today, even if we remove race from the constitution, we should identify race and we should somehow try to reflect and identify all those issues as we are talking in those panels about race to fight racism. So it's not the idea that you're going to remove the word race, that actually race doesn't exist. And this is what many advocacy in France right now using Black Lives Matter as a platform is asking for ethnic statistics, is asking for different markers to be understood that. In Brazil, which is another country I'm working for my research, this is a little bit the myth of the racial harmony, that the country is all completely mixed race. So in a way, race doesn't exist because everyone is mixed. Everyone has indigenous, European, black roots, which is also another way to negate race in a sense, because it's a way to say that we are all concerned in a country that is 60% black. And when, in terms of representation in the media, but also in the political power, the main representation remain white, or at least light skin. So this once again shows that it's not by erasing the race category that we actually don't see racism. But this is something that we can have in our conversation. And maybe in other countries that are more racially homogeneous, this is the question of citizenship, immigration, refugees, that will bring the question of race and that will bring the question of racism. So as Professor Rowdy was saying, it's important to see over visual markers, social markers as religion to reflect race. This is something moving all the time, and this is something that doesn't stay only on the skin color or the racial profile. Something important to remember, in 1948, this Universal Declaration of the Human Rights from the United Nations brought together a lot of experts, representatives from different legal and cultural backgrounds. And when you read the Article 2, that is on the slide, it's saying that everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration without distinction of any kind, such as race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth, or other status. And what I found also interesting, since we are still somehow governed by those universal statutes of that declaration, that race, color, religion, national and social origin, that are one of the main markers to see racism, are the ones that are highlighted in that declaration. How to think transnationality. So I just want to say first that thinking about transnationality is already what we do when we think about race in general. We all come from post-slavery, post-colonial context. As we know, for more than 5-6 centuries, colonialism has displaced people as force of labor, has displaced people to discover and to create genocide in population, Aboriginal population, indigenous population. So we cannot remove the transnational aspect of what is happening. Today, we had diaspora, multicultural places, people mixing races, a lot of immigration. So this idea that also race should remain in a nation state is a kind of an illusion, because we already live today in a place where all those discourses are displaced all over the world. And something that is very important, end of the 80s and in the 90s, this is obviously the globalization of media, that mid-90s, early 2000 has been very, very strongly reinforced by internet, and all the circulation of activist figures and moment of history with internet and new media becoming a social archive of all those different struggles have also shifted in a way our activist perspective on the events. Like on the left side, you had this I Have a Dream from Martin Luther King, a moment very important, Nelson Mandela free from the prison, and Ahmed Taini from Palestine, and we can speak maybe more about Palestine as a site of international advocacy around post-colonial and occupation in the discussion afterwards. This is what I would call this theory of assemblage. All those different visual markers, all those different moments that are traveling through time, that are traveling through different platforms, film, storytelling, transmedia, social media, and that are creating a new narrative that we are all somehow becoming a kind of a global village of all those activist figures and narrative, people that we can also somehow translate in other languages and that we are using also as a platform in our own countries. One of the examples to show you something a little bit different in terms of assemblage is to put together two figures, Angela Davis, that I talked a little bit before, and Marielle Franco. She was an Afro-Brazilian activist and councilwoman that was actively fighting police violence and that was murdered in 2018 in the center of Rio de Janeiro. And in the way to represent her and the way the image of her have been traveling all over the world, organized by a lot of campaigns, for instance, from the family, the activists in Brazil, the Black community that have been writing statements also in the US, in Europe. Her image, a lot of activists have been interviewing, tell me that her image looks like a lot the image of Angela Davis and remind them a lot the struggle that they've been already living in the 70s when Angela Davis was arrested and was in prison. And if you see down the image, you have Angela Davis today that is speaking a lot about what is happening on the Black Lives Matter movement. She has been also a strong advocate to know who killed, who ordered Marielle Franco murder. And she has in her library a small image of her as a reminder of that fight. And I find it interesting that that American scholar with that story of being a Black Panther, an American activist for race, Marxist, that is also reusing and somehow using her platform to speak about Marielle Franco shows that circulation of racial justice figures. This is another poster from a manifestation, a protest in the US, when you can see on the left side the image of George Floyd, and on the right side, Marielle Franco, when they put both of their very, very strong statement, this I can breathe that has been repeated from, unfortunately, over death in the US since the creation of Black Lives Matter. And Marielle Franco, some days before dying, she wrote on Twitter, how many people have to die to end this war, without knowing that days afterwards, she would be herself killed for being voicing all those concerns around police violence and Black genocide in the favelas. So once again, to put together in the same protest is already a call for an international Black diasporic community that is going to advocate together. COVID-19 has also played a very, very strong moment for that catalyst of change. First, I think in many countries, we realized that people, usually person of color, brown and Black people that work in those works that are not recognized as essential, were actually essential during the lockdown moment. And it also showed for many of them that couldn't get access to right hygiene standards, or even couldn't get access to hospital, the big paradox into that those people are fighting for us, going to work despite, all the issue of contagion, but at the same time, they are not being given the same privilege than other people have in terms of access of health and in general, hygiene. Just as a fact, in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, the first person that died of the COVID was a Black maid of 60 years old that coughed the COVID from her employer that come back from a trip in Europe. And also and in France, we had the same story with a cashier woman that was a trade union leader and that was working in a supermarket, and that was from Maghrebi origin. And I do think that also those figures of mortality were very important to show that there was a stronger vulnerability, that in the US, for instance, you had 6 to 7 times more chances to die of COVID if you were Black. So those statistics were extremely important. One of the catalysts that was extremely important for me was one of the controversy that 2 French doctors talked about the possibility of creating vaccine in Africa for the COVID, saying that in Africa they didn't have enough infrastructure to deal with the pandemic. And the same way they did a very, very bad comparison with sex workers and the lack of protection of sex workers can have when they can get AIDS. They're like, as Africa doesn't have enough infrastructures and access to be protected, we should test the vaccine onto them with all the risks that could have. This has become viral, and you can see on the slide, on the left side, there was an hashtag called We Are Not Lab Rats, and people from all over the world that identify with the cause or Black diasporic communities have been advocating that this is not a way to speak about the African descent communities, and this very colonial perspective on the COVID should change. And in the tweet that I put also on the slide, I find it interesting that in the hashtag that is put, you have Africans are not lab rats, Africa, Black Lives Matter, lockdown extension. So kind of a convergence of the Black Lives Matter movement in this African are not lab rats movement that is saying a lot about the situation today of importance of bringing together under an umbrella concept, the question of anti-racism struggle. So I wanted to give as a kind of conclusion, a small reflection. So one of the things that I take from the panelists is the idea that race is a movement. Race is never static. We cannot think that race and racism issues are not going to evolve to something very different. And I think the question of Islamophobia is very important. The other thing is to read race through other markers like religion, but also to think it within our communities. And I do think that the presentation on the question of light skin and beauty is also showing that through colorism and through targeting maybe people that are darker skinned, our communities also that are racialized are somehow responsible for bringing a kind of Eurocentric vision of beauty based on whiteness. And this should change, obviously. One of the things that is very important is shifting the conversation from privilege to access to right. So if we speak only about privilege, that, for instance, like in the US and Europe, that white person will have more privilege because of their skin color, or the same thing for social status, is in a way a great way to make people conscious of their privilege, but we have to shift it to the access to rights, because at the end of the day, the struggle is to have like all a very, very safe environment to live in, not to be killed by the police, to be treated when you're sick. So to find a way to put everyone together in this access to right. And I think that being together as a global community can be very important. And then obviously, and to go back also to the question of cinema, the idea of representation matters. So the idea of collaboration, as I was talking, the people in the street, the activists, the memory that they bring, but also scholars and people that work in different circles in the private sector should now collaborate to make a much more open world. This is not only belonging to the street. And one of the things that is very important, and this is also something that I want to give to the youth activists that have been managing the program tonight, is the idea that we are both experience and expertise. So people of color, people that have been going through racism in their lives and I want to advocate, usually use their experience, and sometimes it's extremely exhausting to speak your own experience of racism as an argument to fight it. So I think it's very important to reflect all the time that when you read, when you get access to other stories of activism, other stories of racism, you build up a series of tools that you can use for dialogue and you become an expert of it. You shouldn't be forced to be all the time speaking about your experience without presenting yourself as an expert. And I think it's very important to remind that, because it's also very exhausting, and we can speak about that in the discussion around mental health, that we cannot expect from people suffering all the time those racist issues to be the bearer of the debate. And then very finally, to speak about Islamophobia in my own country, hijab and the veil in general in France, that is a secular country, has become a huge catalyst of the debate, and for me a very Islamophobic content around that. And in the media, we had in 2 weeks, I think one moment, around 200 shows and TV shows around that. And there was almost no woman, a Muslim woman with veil that came to talk on television. And I think this has to change. We have to invite on the TV, we have to get expert, and we don't have to speak on behalf of other people. And I think that the moment that we are living now with the COVID and this idea of, I'm not saying rethinking, but already starting to unthink our media, is also to think that those experts, those people that speak on behalf, that are journalists, should get a better racial literacy about all the debates. That could be inviting experts, but also we need to hear people facing racism on the conversation. This is extremely important. And then as a conclusion, something that I say all the time to my students, and I want to share with you as a thank you for the invitation. There is nothing like identity problems in our life. There is just a society that is not able to accept plural identities. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for your, that's a very insightful presentation from Leonard Cortanas, reflecting from the previous 3 speakers. Now you can start asking questions on the chat box, because the limited times, I'm going to choose one for each panels. First is question to Mr. Raudi Gatmir. Good, Pak Raudi, are you there? Okay, this question is coming from Ahmad Suryono from Zoom. Pendapat mengenai pemberitaan di media televisi dan media online yang seolah menyudutkan suatu kelompok organisasi, apakah ini termasuk Islamofobia? Nah, saya tidak tahu apakah organisasi ini masuk, apakah organisasi Islam, because he mentioned about Islamophobia and organizations. But as far as I know, you also research about this, about Islam and media, and especially in Islamic organizations. Okay, Mr. Raudi, how do you evaluate? Pak Raudi, Anda di sana?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm here.
Pak Raudi. Okay, from Arihat Suryono questions, how do you evaluate this? How the Indonesian mainstream media, depict this Indonesian Islamic organization?
Well, thank you, MTC. I'll try to make it very brief to answer this question. Well, I've been researching this kind of, let's make it straightforward. I'm a specialist in researching on how the Indonesian mainstream media depict, portray on Islamic religion groups such as Front Pembela Islam Indonesia, also HTI, Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, and some other, also NU and Muhammadiyah. My research especially focused on how the Indonesian mainstream media portray the FPI, Front Pembela Islam Indonesia. My tentative findings, I can make it short that there's a strong tendency, ideologically speaking, that some of the Indonesian mainstream media focus on more to depict FPI especially almost in negative way. Every negative way aspect of it. Just for example, they depict on every cause that FPI has been doing so far is bad. There's no good cause conducted by FPI. So FPI view as a terrorist organization in Indonesia, no matter what they do, for public cause, such as, in helping people in these disaster areas, something like that. So there's a strong tendency that everything about FPI should be put forward in a negative way. So the voice here is always negative. So as a critical discourse analyst, I see this in my perspective very negative way in how the media I can mention a few, Kompas, Jakarta Post, Tempo, both magazine and also newspaper, online and print, all of them voice FPI in a very negative way. So this is, from my perspective, very unfair, because what I found, what I can find from this, the way they report on this issue, what we call as there's no diversity in selecting news source. For example, Tempo tended to select their news source just for certain people only. These certain people, traditionally voice very, the way that this news source have a very strong, such a kind of negative voice of FPI. So that's why when I gave previously I gave you the news bias categorization. What this mainstream media has put forward on FPI in regarding how they report on FPI, the way they selected their news source is biased. Because we in journalism world, we know what we call as what is it? We have to be balanced. We have to cover both sides. So in this regard, it is very difficult for me to say that some of my subject, my object of research, tend to be negative. Especially when it comes to FPI. That would be all.
Thank you, Rowdy. And I think his research about these issues already published internationally, right?
Yes.
So us here can read about your research about that. You can search through Google his name, Rowdy Gatmirs, and with the keywords FPI mungkin ya Pak ya?
Yes.
Or probably Islam and media. Okay, thank you so much for the questions. And next, I'm going to ask questions to Alexander Matthews. This is coming from YouTube, from Fred. Based on your presentation, we can all note that to the notion that Papua is mostly portrayed in somewhat negative image in our film stories. And the fact today that Papua is part of Indonesia and film is often considered as our cultural product. So what do you think? There are very less interest to challenge that somewhat negative perspective of Papua from the movie makers. So, Alex, okay, as the filmmakers, what can you suggest them about these issues?
More research, I think, because it's very, it's very, very tricky when you have some movies and you only base your assumption and your stereotyping because you crafting this product. This movie is only based on your mind, but it can be wrong at all sides. So that's maybe what happened in when we automatic thinking about Papuas. Yeah, maybe I think the research the first about the Papuans and don't trap with your mind. Don't think that your mind is always right because you need to broaden your horizon view about the Papuan. So that's the first, and maybe it's challenging because like it's expensive, of course, goes to Papua, but there's many literature, I think, and you can challenge your mind to find the other sides of what you're thinking about the Papuans, maybe like that.
Okay, so actually it's about like open your mind a little bit, change your perspective. Okay, I think there's lots of issues or angles that can be portrayed in Indonesian films, especially when we talk about Papua, not only about the negative things. Okay, thank you, Alex. And now we're going to ask question to Christy Reine. We receive lots of questions regarding to your materials, yes, Christy's, but I have a special questions. This is from Italia, from Roberta Testoni. Okay, so she's actually share her experience. Okay, so there is an Indonesian girl I knew in Italy, and now she's studying in New York University. Wow, probably is your friend, Leo. And she's studying, and she said that growing up in Indonesia, I've always had a weird relationships with beauty standards. So this is from her point of view as Europeans receive stories about an Indonesian woman that thing that is weird about when we're talking about beauty standards. And we also have a question from Sania Christie. If you're creating content about Tim Sabo Matang, what about the other beauty content creators? Should they also voicing about the other skin color? I guess that's the questions. Okay, Christy, are you there? Okay, I think she's not there. Okay, I'm going to move to Leo. Okay, this is from Joanne. Leo, Joanne asking questions. Okay, what do you think we can do to get rid of the stereotypes of some race or country that can worsen the perception that race or country? Okay, what can we do? And probably you can share your experience because you also experience several things. Probably victim of racism. I don't know. You can share to Joanne here.
Yeah, so this is a vast question, and obviously it takes all of us. I think that first, speaking about it, it's important. I don't know enough of the context in Indonesia, but what I can feel from the other presenters, that already speaking about race is already a first thing to make it visible as a problem. So if we make it visible, we make the whole society responsible for it, and we also put our politicians and legislators accountable for what we have to do. So I think this is the first thing. Not saying it doesn't exist. Yes, it exists. There is a reaction. There are a lot of people that are claiming different things. Also, as a part of my presentation, to use other examples, maybe successful practices from other countries, that could be organization, activism, could also be a way that we are not alone in these things, and the new media and social media are bringing together people from different communities to strategize. It will sound maybe a little bit corny, but it's always better together, right? The idea that we are not alone in that fight. Also in that fight, as I was speaking about this expertise, not to forget women, not to forget people with different abilities, not to forget people with different sexual orientation. I think this is extremely important to think that representation matters, that we shouldn't leave dominant people also within communities that would be dominant from other identities would take the lead. We have to be extremely careful how to share correctly the time. And then as I come from media, it will take some time, but anyone that would like to be a filmmaker or to work on communication or to work in the newsroom, to already creating a new imaginary. We have to be honest. When you have to make a movie, you have producers. It has to be capitalistically viable. It has to be successful. So sometimes they will say, okay, a little bit of bad humor, it will work with the people. We don't want to challenge people that will be tired after one day to watch a film and to speak about racism. So it's step by step, right? And also we have to reflect what is funny on behalf of other communities. But I would say that one of the ways to work on stereotypes is to create other kinds of representation, to give agency. I'm taking the presentation of Alexander about Papua, maybe to create narratives that finally give agency Papua to advocate for themselves or to give them possibilities to create their own movies and to speak about their own culture without being the catalyst of racist/discriminative vision. So I don't know, maybe putting a little bit the camera down and to give to others that don't have the chance to document their own lives, to be the social change of creators. And as an educator, as a professor, this is what I do with my students. I tell them they all have a voice, as Christy, you said very well. And because you all have a voice, you are all media maker. Now today we have that. We can create anything with our phone. We can put them online. So let's be fierce, let's protect each other, let's hashtag, let's create networks. But let's not forget that we are not alone in that fight.
Okay, thank you. I think that's quite a recap everything what we've discussed today. And talking about movement, actually, the committee is also having a movement now with hashtag harmony in diversity and also hashtag yes we fight racism. You can check on at our Instagram at com.president, COMM.president. Okay, so it's time to bring this webinar to a close. Sorry, because we have very limited of times. Please do not leave the room yet because we're going to have evaluation, photo session, and announcement from committee about e-certificate for you guys. And on behalf of Communications President University, our gratitude goes to our speakers, Muhammad Rodi Gatmir, Alexander Matthews, Christy Raina, Leonard Cortana, Kinosaurus, and also we have people from CSV International for your support, and to all participants for all the love. And we've had a lot of fun today talking about diversity, race, and representation. Christy here. Okay, so you have a last question. Okay, we're still talking about a question from Roberta Tostani in Italy. When she said there's an Indonesian woman living in Italy in Reggio Emilia, and she said that why Indonesian has always have a weird things about wait, let me see. Okay, growing up in Indonesia, I've had a weird relationship with beauty standards. And also a question from Sania Chisti when said, oh, do you think that another beauty content creator should make a content also about another skin color?
Okay, I will answer the first question from the Italy. Yeah, I think the beauty standards not only came from the teenager environment, but from the when we still very young, like if we have like a dark skin because we play around outside, and then usually it's not only came from our friend but also from our family, like judging us because of our physical appearance. And yeah, it's become the people mindset and people perspective, and it's really like build the perspective that beauty is about the appearance. But the thing that I want to ask to all of you guys, please voice this issue that beauty is not about the physical appearance, but also about deeper than that. It's about our behavior, our achievement, our academic. It's not only about the physical. So please, if you have if you have a child later on, please don't judge their appearance, like saying that, oh, why you have a dark skin when your parents like have a white skin, and yeah, and so forth. Start from building the perspective that beauty is deeper than that. And for the second question, I still didn't get the point of the question, like the other.
Yeah, Shania is asking this question. You're campaigning about Tim Salmatang. Do you think that
Uh-huh.
a beauty content creator also campaigning another? If I can recap this, another skin color to her or his content.
I don't really think so, because like every content creator has their own uniqueness and has their own, like a point of view to share what they are concerned about. So yeah, but I hope that if there's an influencer of a beauty content creator, like start to give a more education to their followers about the product, like for the skincare, give the education about the ingredients, not only say that this is good for brightening your face for 1 week, and yeah, I hope that they will, like more honest, more think about their followers. They are influencer, and they must give a good influence to their followers in order to make the betterment of Indonesia.
So everybody actually can influence lots of people. Yes. When Leo said, just using your phone, do something, speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can start that. Okay, since youngsters also initiate this kind of events, Puma Communications. So please, guys, do not leave the room yet. And Christy is already answering questions, and also we think, yes, as you live today, please ask yourself how we have to fight the racisms. And also there's another interesting question, but we have to think it by ourselves, I guess. What the cultural racism, does this imply that racism can be gathered from generation to generations? Question from Kimberly Golda. I think we should think about it, reflect on it. Is it racism is about generation to generation, and how you can change it, I mean, into creating better future, as the cliche word says. All right, so I think it's a wrap. Do not leave the room yet. But my name is Anastasia Citra, and I will give. Thank you so much for having us, and I will give back to MCs.
Okay, thank you, Miss. And that's all of the Q&A session that we have. And again, I would like to thank the participant with their interesting question. And for next, before we going to show you guys the result of Mentimeter, again, we still have the second question of the Centimeter. You guys can see on our Zoom chat room. You guys can fulfill it on the link. Thank you. Okay. Before we end the event, we will have a virtual photo will guide by me. And here we have 3 style differences photo. The first style is like this, holding your hand. It's like Lives Black Matter logo. So, and then the second and the third style is a freestyle. So you guys can show yourself in the next style. Okay. Please, for all participants, turn on the camera because we have a photo session together. Okay, let's do the first style, holding hand like this. And please show your face and smile. And I'm going to count it. Okay, 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, and for the next style is a freestyle. You guys can show everything you want. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, next we still have once again. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for the participant. So we are going to show you the result of the Mentimeter. Please, EO, show it to the participant. Okay, you guys can see it. It's the Mentimeter results for the second question. Well, okay, I would like to say thank you very much for our speaker today. And thank you for the participant for your participating. And also we have a e-certificate for all participants that joined today. We're going to send it on your email. And please start to understand differences, start to love and accept it because everything starts from you. Please accept our apologize. Is there any mistaken? I am Bastian, the MC is signed out. Good evening and see you in another change. Bye guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Apologize. Is there any mistaken? I am Bastian, the MC is signed out. Good evening and see you in another change. Bye guys.
Yuk. Le, apain ini dong?
Ya, bayar. Ntar gue jemput.
Aduh, mana?
It's the guy, my name on a stone written down. Darling, it's this thing, it's where I'm living now. Yeah, we always knew that the day would come, 'cause all we had was a spark. But one day soon, when the sparks all bloom in the chasing back the dark, I'm gonna see you again on them gold streets, standing next to me. I know I'm gonna see you again. Darling, won't be long till every trace of trouble is gone. We'll be together and I'm not sure what that means, but I know it'll be better than we ever dreamed when I see you again.